All right. Greg, welcome to the show. It's great to have you. For those who are listening, Greg is the founder of Alt Agency, and where basically they help other agencies with kind of getting more efficient, basically become more scalable. Um, Greg, you want to maybe unpack that a little bit more, and then maybe we'll get into the questions?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. So yeah, Alt Agency, we're fundamentally a training and consulting company. And we've now worked with, at the time of recording this, just over 700 agency owners, service providers, freelancers. They self-identify a little bit differently from time to time. And we really focus on, I'd say, two key areas. One is like productization and systemization. So how do we take your services and package them up into like a core capability that can be delivered like a streamlined machine with a minimum amount of the founder? And when you do that enough times and for long enough, typically, and some founders will realize that they're sitting on a ton of expertise that can be monetized. And so we believe that if you want to scale while still having a abundant lifestyle for you and your family, that you should scale through intellectual property, not through just taking more and more clients and having to keep growing your team equally with new clients. Like, so that's really where we focus on those two kind of key areas: is productization and then monetizing of your intellectual property.
Awesome. That sounds interesting, and we'll probably get into that a little bit later.
For sure.
But honestly, the thing that I caught on to that made me reach out to you and kind of initiate this process of having you on the podcast was you talked about this 5 1s approach that I think you had gotten from somebody else,
Hmm.
but you had applied it, and I thought it was very insightful. I think a lot of agencies tend to try to um, kind of use the spaghetti method to with their marketing, with their with their agency efforts, and yeah, I'd just love you to kind of unpack that and maybe tell the story of like how it affected your agency.
Yeah, for sure. So when I started building my agency, we were kind of like a do everything for you, but specific to Infusionsoft users. So we were, which is now called Keep, a marketing automation tool. So we did have one subtle advantage of like accidentally we narrowed down on only Infusionsoft users, but like when it came to that, if the word Infusionsoft or Keep were in the sentence, like we would do whatever they needed, and that led us down a lot of different rabbit holes. And so I was at a conference. Honestly, I forget what conference it was, but Clay Collins, the founder of Lead Pages, which like click funnels and all that stuff, got on the stage and said, actually, I think it was their event. I don't know. It was called Converted, maybe. Um, and this was January of 2017. And he said, the fastest way to build a 7-figure business is to focus on the 5 1s. You should focus on one avatar, selling them one solution, using one conversion method, using one traffic source, and do that for 1 year. The 1 year was the 5th one. Um, and I was like, all right, well, one avatar. We were pretty, check the box on that. Infusionsoft users that were selling courses and coaching were pretty much all of our clientele. That felt good. And then they're like, one solution. And I was like, well, we do everything in Fusion. Like, I'm doing webinar funnels, I'm doing Jeff Walker launch formula, I'm doing scheduling emails, pulling reports, tagging. Like we did everything. And so I was
Yeah.
like, I don't even know what our solution is really. And so like immediately I was like, like something's wrong there. Uh, and so I went back and we cleaned up our offering. And in just less than 11 months, we had kind of kept our legacy clients on the side, and I kind of repackaged the offering to have like that one solution. And that one solution in less than 11 months got us to a 7-figure run rate in just under 11 months. So I was like, oh my God, this thing works. And I think it's really just the focus, that you kind of alluded to a little bit. Like there wasn't spaghetti. It was, oh, you don't need this. We're not for you. Oh, you do need this. We're for you. Here's how it
Yeah.
works. Here's what it costs. And it made my marketing easier because I just would talk about that one topic. And it simplified everything. And I've found that a lot of other, at least agencies that I've introduced that concept to, service providers that we've introduced that to, it's really unlocked a new level of speed to hitting their initial target.
No, I like that. I think honestly that hits on something that I think a lot of agencies deal with, which is that positioning piece. I was talking with someone recently who, like I mentioned that positioning is is particularly important for agencies, um, and mainly because I think when you're growing as an agency, there's your clients are almost pushing you to expand the scope of what you do. It's like, hey, you do this for us. Can you also do this other thing for us? Like, we don't want to pay somebody else if we can just pay you to do it.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, well, like so and so just canceled on us. Yeah, it might be, maybe we can figure this out, how to provide it. And pretty
Yeah.
soon you're running a full service marketing agency where you're kind of a master of none, and you're basically kind of blending in with the rest of the. You're basically making it harder for you to differentiate and compete with other people, with other agencies.
100%. I actually want to call it something you just said that I actually think is very often confused, and I actually didn't have a great way to articulate it until just recently. Um, that full service term. So the full service actually isn't the trap, because if you look at, and again, for those listening, I came from agencies that were a part of Omnicom. We worked with Pepsi, Unilever. We were full service. The
Hmm.
Some people say full service, but what they really mean is a la carte. At our agency and every full service agency that I've been at, we had less than 20 clients, and they were doing 8 figures a year. So clients were worth a lot of money, but they used every service, aka full service. Like every client used the full service.
Hmm.
They used us for everything. It wasn't, oh, this client only uses this client only uses that. Full services, every client uses the full service. A la carte is where people go wrong is, oh, one client over here needs this, one client over here is getting that. They choose. And we're now in this operational like tornado of oh, I got to find someone that knows how to do that. I don't even know anything about it, but I accepted it, you know?
Yeah.
And so that's where, the classic, and I don't know who to attribute this quote to, but it's not mine. It's like most agencies struggle and fail from indigestion, not starvation. So it's not the fact that they need more leads. It's like you
Mm.
can't literally process the work that you have efficiently because it's too diverse. Some need this, some need that. No client is the same. And that makes the operational piece so complex that actually creates the issue in marketing because you don't know who you serve. So
Yeah.
if you don't know who you serve, how do you go get more leads? You can't. It's almost
Yeah.
impossible. So it kind of is this self-fulfilling prophecy of oh, we don't know where the next client is coming from. We'll take on the additional work. And then the cycle, it's like a reverse flywheel. It's like it makes
It
you
slows you down.
it slows you down. Yeah.
Yeah. That's so true. Um, you outlined those five ones.
Hmm.
Can you talk? I mean, you talk about that has been really helpful for helping to scale quickly, just from that focus.
Yeah.
Um, you also talk a lot about kind of, I guess, transitioning from like more of these custom projects to productized services in particular. Do you feel like
Yeah.
productized services is like the solution for that, like that one offering that's part of that five ones, or do you think about it a little differently?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think that the term productized is I don't think there's actually a real definition to it. I mean, every time I talk to someone, I'm actually, as I bring people on my own YouTube channel as guests, I'm like, how do you define it? And I've never once heard anyone say it the same. So I don't believe it's in the dictionary. But uh, so what I will say is what I would love for people to take away, and again, this is my opinion. I see, if you're someone who, agency owner, freelancer, service provider, and you actually want to grow profitably with a lean team and or even yourself, I just don't see anything better than productization, period. Like it will get you to what you want from a lifestyle perspective, and the business running without you, like it'll allow for that. And so, one way that I like to kind of describe the difference between service, productized service, and product is actually from a guy by the name Jack Butcher, who has an amazing Instagram account. He doesn't really post on it as much anymore, but Visualize Value. And he created this visual once that was kind of like I look at productized services and just service in general as like a sliding scale. So let's think on one side, you have service. And so on that side, service, as he defines it, is work without a process. In the middle is productized service, which is work with a process. And then on the other end of the spectrum is product, which would be process without work. And if you think of like physical products, like you're walking down the aisle, there's a grocery, look at a box of cereal, like what you get is what you get. The ingredients are listed on the side, the nutritional facts all there, like the backstory, how it got started, the origin story, like here's what you get, here's what's not included. That bowl with the strawberries actually isn't in the box. It's just a graphic on the front, like what's here, what's not. Like that's a product.
Right.
And depending upon your service skill set, your capability, you kind of get to decide, like, are you trying to build something that's as close to a physical product as possible? If so, you will design and have to do certain things. Or are you going to be more in the middle where it's like a little bit product and a little bit service, which is kind of where the productized service comes in, which is like it's you follow the same process for every single client.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that there can't be customizations? No, of course there can be. Like if you are a logo designer, like obviously everyone's going to have a different logo. If you do websites, everyone's going to have like their own colors, the copy, like that's all custom tailored. But like you and your team should onboard the client exactly the same, every single client. You should follow the exact same order of events. We're doing a website right now, and the designer is very productized and systematic in his process. Like, we're going to do the identity first. We're going to buy into these things. Then we're going to get sign off on the homepage. We're doing a layout. You get approval on the layout. Then we go build out the next pages. We're also going to get copy. We're going to do all the copy in a Google Doc before it ends up on the website. And each page has a Google Doc. It's very, and he always, whether it's me or the 100 other clients he's worked with, we all go through the exact same process, and he never deviates. To me, that's productized, right? And if you're deviating from the process for a client here, a client there, you're creating that unnecessary operational drag.
Gotcha. So basically, you make it more efficient just by having a clear process that you take everyone through, and the specifics might be different, but the fact that you're walking everyone through the same steps basically helps to kind of make it that more middle category of productized service.
Yes, and for the creatives that are going to come at me, because y'all are the ones that come at me the most. We've worked with a lot of creative agencies, brand identity, brand strategy, website designers, etc. So this does apply to you. And in fact, unless I missed it, the first usage of the word productized that I've ever seen was the book called Built to Sell by John Warrillow. In E-Myth, which I believe came first, he used systemized, which again, a lot of similarities. But the book Built to Sell, for all of you creatives that are like, creatives can't be productized, the book was about a creative agency. So like the first real usage of the word and story of this whole thing was about a creative agency that narrowed down into doing logos into a 5-step process. They marketed to their prospect, hey, we have this 5-step logo creation process. Here's how we're going to work with you. Here's how we move you through the 5 steps. Like, to me, that's productized.
Do you think, and maybe, yeah, help me kind of connect productized to something you mentioned earlier, which is company IP. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure they connect, but I guess help me connect the dots between those two.
Yeah, so your process can be IP. So like for our clients, we have them unpack their process into usually a 6 or 9-step process, and we show them how to visualize it for their sales process and in marketing and even delivery. And that one graphic, which represents their process, is intellectual property, right? Like it can be
Hmm.
trademarked, and it's their way to show prospects in the world their unique way of moving someone through the experience. So like that's the first version, right? Like just that one asset is fundamentally intellectual property. When I talk about monetizing your IP, obviously, if you're just using that inside of sales conversations, you're fundamentally monetizing IP that way. But what I'm really meaning is like getting paid for that is when you've done it enough times and you can actually teach it, and then you can have a whole different way to serve clients, and you guide them through your process instead of you doing it for them. And this is really powerful for a lot of different reasons. One, if any agency out there has ever lost a client because they wanted to bring it in house, you have an opportunity to extend that relationship by saying, hey, like, obviously, hey, we've been working together for a year or 2 years. Like, you've adopted everything that we do. Let us train you on it internally so you can run with it. You could
Hmm.
extend that relationship easily another 6 to 24 months just by teaching their people how to do what you were doing instead of losing the client. And I know that when I was client side before I went out on my own, every agency that we hired, we had them add a line item that said, teach us this because we don't want to have to rely on you for life. And so we were paying them to teach us behind the scenes how they do what they do. So we owned the process in house. And most big corporate companies and brands will do this. Like, and they will pay a premium for it as well. So a client that's going to bring it in house is an opportunity that would much rather have you consult them on the process because they might have the resources in house to do the dirty work and they don't need you to do the dirty work. Or another common example, which is where I think most people go to first, is as you raise the bar on your own price, as you should, um, you're going to get the people to say, "Man, I really want what you have. I just can't afford it, but I'm willing to do some of the work in order to achieve that outcome." And so, if the outcome is clear because you productized it, some people will be willing to follow your process and be the labor to get it. And so when we were doing webinar funnels for our agency, we were charging anywhere from 15 to 25K to do a webinar funnel. And we got a lot of the like the up and comer people that were like, "Hey, we need this. We saw what you did for that person over there. I just can't afford 20 grand." I was like, "Well, how about 7,500? We'll pre-install all of the stuff into your application. We'll give you all of the templates and we'll meet with you a couple times to guide you on how it works." That was version 1. And we sold that like hotcakes.
Hmm.
And I was like, "Oh wow, like there's more people that fit this bracket than the higher level people that were paying us 25." And so we started like actually making more money from the mid-ticket offer for the people that were willing to do some of the work. Though over time, we create videos, how-to tutorials, SOPs, pre-built email scripts, and that's all intellectual property that they could be going through on their own without me. We critique it. We still are involved. We have our hands on it. But like, that's a real amazing way for many service providers to add a new income stream to scale that is redoing and leveraging things that they had already been doing for
Hmm.
their clients.
Yeah.
So this obviously is where the 5 1s breaks, because you're adding now another offer, which is why we don't do it right away. You want to have enough repetition and know the ins and outs and the loopholes of getting that outcome, that promise done efficiently, and then codify that into a step-by-step repeatable process, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you're basically, I mean, in some ways, you might be productizing that IP into a new offer.
Yeah.
Um, would you? I mean, in parts of what you said sounded like consulting. Parts of it sounded more like a course. Would you? I mean, is it does it kind of depend on your audience? And you're like, oh, maybe this should be a workshop where we go on site and we do something in person. Like, what have you seen?
All of it. So this is something that I've been saying a lot recently, but I think the term agency has no meaning anymore. Um, our job as a service provider, as an agency owner, is to get our client a specific result, get them to an outcome that they came to us for. We should use everything and anything at our disposal to make that happen fast, efficient, and profitable for us and them. And the tools available to us are way more, diverse than ever before. Like, um I could facilitate a workshop. I could have you watch a video. I could do it for you. I could mentor you. I could give you the SOP. Like, there's so many modalities that we can use to get our client the outcome. And some people, like, were like, "Oh, that's a course." It's like, who cares if it makes the client get the result fast enough and they have to watch 5 videos to get there, and it takes less effort from both sides. That's a win.
Hmm.
So I think it's like, how do we look at the fact? And I've been saying, the world of agency, like the creator economy, course businesses, consulting, those lines have never been blurrier
Hmm.
than ever before. And it's like, that's an advantage. Like, we should lean into that and use that to get our clients results with little effort as possible, as long as it still works for them. And so when you apply that to different types of service providers, it'll look different for everybody. Because some want to be more product than others, and more scalable than others, that it does become full course with like no support, because that's way more scalable, because there is zero fulfillment. But if you value client relationships and your service requires some nuance, you probably want to have ways to help implementation. That could be in
Hmm.
a group format, that could be a done for you, that could be a one-on-one. There's so many different ways to facilitate that outcome. And I think we need to be looking at all of those. And so what we do is kind of help our clients understand what those options are, and slowly integrate them to create more and more leverage and efficiency, for not only them to have the business that they love, but the client get the outcome that they came to them for.
Yeah. It sounds like too, like there's almost like a mindset shift that maybe agency founders need to go through, where it's like the core value that I'm providing is the intellectual property, is like the knowledge, and that
Oh yeah.
knowledge can be packed up, and packaged for a course. It can be packaged for consulting. It can be packaged for, with hands and feet, on actual maybe implementation work. But it's the core value that undergirds all those things is that the learning and understanding of basically going deep in one area.
Yeah. And so, um, for a lot of people watching, and myself included, the first real use case of this that you might already be doing and you didn't even know it, is the videos that you record to teach your team how to do the thing that you're trying to delegate. I mean, like, that's V1 right there. If
Hmm.
you can teach someone on your team to do it, with the tools and assets that you're giving them and be like, hey, follow this video and you'll get it done. What's to say that the client can't be the recipient of said video? There is no reason they can't.
No.
Now, again, you have to sell it a certain way, and there's a certain type of person that will want and be willing to do that. But like, if you want a business that runs without you, you're gonna need to be able to teach someone the pieces of the process. And so, like, when we chunk our clients' methodology out into 6 or 9 steps, we can go look at step 2 and say, okay, well, how do we do step 2? How does someone move through this process? And I'm like, oh, well, it's this, 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 and this. Okay, cool. So can you teach someone how to do those 6 things? Like, walk me through how you do those 6 things. Now it becomes transferable. And that's where the leverage starts. I'm going to botch it, but in Built to Sell, I believe it is, he says that like there's only a few things that make a business sellable and repeatable. One of them is that the thing is teachable. If I can't teach you how to do it, it's not simplified enough.
Hmm.
Like, it's going to be difficult to sell if it cannot be taught. And so, like, we kind of have to unpack and chunk out what is actually happening inside of our service. Kind of back to your point of like, the what your client is sort of paying for is your experience. A classic example that I don't know if you follow him, but Chris Doe from The Future on YouTube, he talks about one of his most popular videos is how to charge for the logo, and he does the whole narrative of like, well, he did the logo that cost $100,000, but it took him 15 minutes. And the guy's like, wait, it only took you 15 minutes to design this logo that you're charging me 100,000 for. And he's like, but it took me 15 years to figure out how to do it in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And you're paying for that too, because it wouldn't have taken, and you actually want it in 15 minutes. You don't want me to take a whole year to design this logo for you. That would suck for both of us, you know?
Mhm.
So like, that expertise has a value, and many service providers, agencies, the thing that they do, the strategy, their methodology, their approach is not even being accounted for in the line item. It's just woven into the fact that they're doing it. You could easily just say, hey, our strategy for this campaign, for this thing, costs 15 grand, and us building it costs 10.
Yeah.
Like, that would just be one even little step of just acknowledging the fact that that's actually why they're coming to you, because you know how to do something that they want, and they're either not willing to do it or they don't know how, hence why they need you.
Yeah. They're paying for your experience, so they don't have to go through all the, you know, mistakes and trial and error on their own.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, I think you touched on this a little bit in the last thing you mentioned, and I know you've talked about it elsewhere, but these same sorts of principles of teaching, systematizing, that sort of stuff can be applied to things like your marketing, your sales,
Yeah.
even like delivery. Can you talk a little bit more about? I mean, I'm just talking to like the average agency owner who's thinking, oh, I'm doing that in a very custom way now. How could I ever, uh, systematize that?
Yep. So, I mean, the first thing first is like, we always start from the inside of the business and move outward. So, like, we start with the offer. Like, if the client is coming to you and saying, I want this, that, and this, and you're like, yes, that's my offer, then it's not productized. Like, it's not specific enough. We want to be able to be like, hey, who has this specific problem? Because we can solve it. Oh, you don't have that problem? You're not for us. So, like, what is the outcome that you are delivering? Like, and that can be as custom execution wise as as you want. That's irrelevant. But like, it starts with, what are they buying from you? Like, what can I buy? Right?
Hmm.
Is it a 3-month project? Is it an 8-week program? Is it a 2-week sprint? Like, it has to have some sort of container with a specific outcome. That's where almost everyone will fall. But because most people are like, I want a system. The next area is client onboarding. if you onboard every client differently, like there's a huge opportunity for probably minimally, like at a minimum, doubling your profit just by having a repeatable onboarding process. Because agencies and service providers, the biggest reason they're not profitable is things like scope creep, things like not delivering projects on time, and all of the inefficiencies around, like whether this is internal or between you and client, of like, hey, is that done yet so I can do what I need to do? Hey, where is this at? I don't know how you categorize that, but like
Yeah.
the checking in on where things are at, communications, whether that's emails, unnecessary meetings to have that, like most agencies lose all of their profitability just between those three things. And so starting with onboarding is like, have a choreographed process. Do they fill out a form, an intake form that gets you all of the things you need before they show up? How do you structure your kickoff call? What's the agenda? Are you taking them through slides? Are you requesting access to certain things? What's the point of the call? Are you communicating and recommunicating the expectation? Are you showing them how your process works so that they play by your rules? Or are you letting them dictate how you're going to work with them? You should have a repeatable onboarding process that is the exact same for every single client, and you should not deviate from it. If you just did that, so intake form into a call, and we talk about these 5 things, and the last thing we talk about is here's what happens next, who's responsible for what. If you just did that, you probably could double your profit. Like, we've seen it.
Yeah. Um, so you mentioned kind of like, basically documenting all this stuff. I know a lot of agencies will have SOPs. Is there a
Mhm.
distinction between what you're describing and SOPs, or is it maybe like the way that you do your SOPs, or?
Um, Actually, everything that I talked about so far has nothing to do with SOPs. You can have SOPs for it, but like, do you have a what is the one intake form that everybody uses when they buy? Do they automatically receive that uh, via email because they can? Or the first thing that happens is email one goes out. Hey, thanks for becoming a client. Fill this out. Once you fill this out, we'll schedule our kickoff call. On the kickoff call, we're going to do XYZ. For that, it could be a Google Doc, but hey, here's our agenda for the call. Or it could be a keynote presentation or PowerPoint, and move them through. Here's how you're going to be successful as one of our clients. Here's how we work. Here's when we're going to talk to you, how frequently, on what platform. Do not call my cell phone. Do not send
Right.
emails to this address, send emails to this address. Like, set the boundaries, like reset the expectation, because I can tell you whatever they agreed to on the sales call, they forgot about, and you need to remind them of it on the onboarding. And so that kickoff call should be the same topics no matter what client comes in. Again, you can write an SOP to have someone guide through that, but like, what are the 2 to 3 assets that will allow you to show up and do the same thing over and over and over again for each and every new client?
Right.
Let's start there.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. You've also mentioned like applying this to content.
Yeah.
How would you productize or just systematize content?
Yeah. So, I mean, let's start with, why do people struggle with content in the first place? Most people don't know what to say. Why do they not know what to say? Because they serve everybody. And so they don't know where to start. When your offer solves a few specific problems, you can tell stories about people that had those problems. You can show your process about how you solve those problems. Um, you could, like, what you say and to whom is just more obvious. And so when you know who you're talking to, having a conversation is a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
When you understand that person's pains and problems, like, just knowing what to say allows you to start doing marketing. It allows you to run an ad. uh, it allows you to send an email to your email list that adds value, right? If one time you talk about a topic A, and then the next time you talk about topic B, and so on and so forth, you're never going to be continually attracting your ideal person. And so your audience is always going to be kind of like a hodgepodge. And so extracting revenue from that will become extremely difficult, because no, people are going to be like, well, does David help me? I'm not sure. Like, he helped me do this, but he also did that over there for that person. They don't even know how to refer you. Like,
Yeah.
talk about, we rely on, like, so many agencies rely on referrals. I bet you that if you don't get a lot of referrals, it's because your client doesn't even know how to refer you. If your client doesn't know how to refer you, what you do is not specific enough.
Yeah.
Period.
No, 100%. I like to use the example of like, in the medical professions, like, are you a general practitioner or are you like, the specialized knee surgeon? And it's like, well, if you need knee surgery, you don't go to your primary care doctor. You want to
Right.
find that specialist. And I guarantee you, if, that specialist, basically, if somebody's like, oh, I have this knee problem, people are like, oh, well, I know this guy who specializes specifically in knee work. And it's like, cool. Like that's going to be much easier to refer to than uh, you know, if they did a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah. One low hanging fruit thing that everybody can do. Here's your action item. If since if you have past clients and you've since changed what you do and you've refined what you do into something more specific, go tell every single past client what you do now. Also, go tell, open up your phone, look at every contact, call them, text them, and say, hey, David, it was great doing that website for you 5 years ago. Since we last spoke, a lot has changed. We've actually been working with insert very specific avatar to insert achieve very specific, outcome. Um, if you know anyone that is struggling with problem A, problem B, problem C, all which should be specific, please point in my way. We do a referral payout. Let everyone in your ecosystem know that that's what it is, because now when they hear, oh, I'm struggling with problem A, oh yeah, David actually does problem A. I'm gonna introduce you to David, right?
Yeah.
So, like, go back to everybody and let them know who you are now, who you serve now, what it is you specialize in now, and more specifically, how can they identify someone that needs that? Oh, don't just leave it at, oh, we do websites for this person.
Hmm.
Here's how you might know that someone might need a website and they should probably talk to me. They might be saying that they can't charge what they're worth, or they're not getting enough leads from their website, or whatever other symptom that your ideal client has. Like, include those couple things. If they say these words, let them know that I can
Yeah.
help. That specificity will make referrals start to come to you a whole lot more.
Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. Yeah. And not just like, oh, we moved agencies and now we're just going to hire you at the next place we went to, but more of like just people who know you by word of mouth. Like they might not even have worked with you. I mean, I've done that. I've referred people to agencies just because I've consumed a particular agency's content enough. And
Yeah.
then somebody says, hey, do you know anybody who does X, Y, and Z? And I'm like, oh, like definitely these folks, that's kind of like their area of specialty.
Yeah, and I mean, think about it, like, um, I used to complain all the time. So when we did the webinar funnels and, like, we continue to evolve, we did a lot of, uh, we used to do a lot of services that we stopped doing. And for a while, this is why I know that this works, because I went and I never told my past clients. And I kept getting referrals from my past clients for people that I didn't want to work with. I was like, these referrals are not helpful, but, like, I felt like I had to take the call because it was a past client. And then I'm like turning people down. I kind of felt bad. Sometimes I said yes, which I didn't want to, but I did because it was a referral, thus perpetuating this,
Yeah.
reverse flywheel. Um, I finally got to the point I was like, yo, John, like, we don't do this anymore. And or for this person, thank you so much for sending them my way, but we now do this. All of the future referrals were actually people that we wanted to work with for the thing that we wanted to be doing. It's like,
Yeah.
and so if you're still getting referrals from people and you don't want to do that, and or that's where the bad clients are coming from, which makes sense. They want to refer you. They liked you. they just don't know what you do anymore. Right. And so we got to go communicate that. And it's like just even that one simple communication can change the type of referral that you get.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Well, this has been super, super interesting, super helpful. I honestly, I think a lot of agencies will kind of have aha moments, if they watch this and or listen to this. Um, is there anything, I guess, any parting words or any, last advice that you'd share with the agency folks that are listening?
Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. I think right now, it's very easy, and I'm guilty of this, so I'm speaking from experience. Uh, it's very easy to see what other people are doing and blindly adopt their definition of what success looks like, and then build something that you grow to hate. Whether that's, oh, I was told to work with chiropractors because they have money. Like, if you don't care about chiropractors, it will be difficult for you to grow a business serving people that you don't genuinely care about. I'm sorry. I haven't met many people that are capable of that. Or doing something that you don't know a lot about or don't enjoy just because, hey, you bought a business in a box program or whatever. Like, you can design something that works for you when you get clear on what it is you want. And so, uh, in the race to find the next client, that will never end, or it'll feel painful until you stop and actually define what it is you want. Like, what does your business look like? Why do you need $1 million business? What does a $750,000 a year business get you, uh, or not get you, that $1 million business would get you?
Hmm.
If there is no good answer to that, then why are we beating ourselves up? Like, you have to have reasons for these things. And I just don't see I see a lot of people chasing goals that were defined by somebody else, and they feel like a loser, or that they feel like they're losing or falling behind because they just didn't define their own bar of success, and they
Yeah.
just latched onto someone else's. And until we sit there and say, this is what I want my business to be about, it's really hard to go create it. And so, if you felt like you've been running someone else's race, I think now is a great opportunity to start, like, defining your own field of play and, like, build the thing that you want unapologetically, because that's what's going to give you the biggest competitive advantage that ever exists, which is you'll never stop doing it
Yeah.
because
You'll just be so excited and pumped
you
and
like it.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
all that
So
momentum. Well, awesome, Greg. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Is there, where can people find you? Like, what's the best place for people to keep in touch with you?
absolutely. Thank you, David. So I would just say, if you go to gregsvideos.com, it'll redirect you to my YouTube channel. We have hundreds of videos kind of diving into all the different things that we were just talking about. So if you were looking for more on this stuff, check out Greg's videos or just search my name on YouTube.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Thanks, David.
We'll see you.